Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. We are here now and we have made it to the last video in our series covering our experience with canine hip dysplasia. If you've been following the series thus far, thank you so much for sticking around. And if you haven't been following the series, this video is going to be part 5 of the series that covers our experience with having a dog that was diagnosed with hip dysplasia, as well as our experience with his total hip replacement. So if you're in the same boat as us and you have a dog that has recently been diagnosed with hip dysplasia and will be undergoing a total hip replacement, this video is basically just an information dump like all the other videos of our experience with certain aspects of Prince's, diagnosis, his symptoms, everything leading up to his surgery and post-surgery. And like I said, this will be the last video in the series and we're going to be talking about Prince's recovery. Just to give a little bit of context, we have an Australian Shepherd and Border Collie mix named Prince. He was diagnosed with hip dysplasia when he was just a year old, and the following year after his diagnosis, he underwent a total hip replacement. Hopefully anyone who's looking for some information of someone who's gone through the same process is able to take away something from this series of videos that will help them with their experience and make their experience a lot easier. And so let's get right into it. So up until the last video, we basically covered everything to picking Prince up from his surgery. So we picked Prince up and the surgeon kind of gave us a debrief of everything we needed to know on how to help Prince with his recovery at home. So we did stay at the vet clinic for, I'd say, about 2.5 hours to get all the information that we needed. That included basically a schedule of all the medications that we needed to administer to Prince to help with his recovery. He was coming home with trazodone, which is to help kind of keep him calm, gabapentin, which is essentially a painkiller, meloxicam, which Prince had already been taking for the past year to help with his hip dysplasia pain, so also a painkiller. And then they had also given us a few sort of extra, medications like Tylenol, stuff that we would have at home. They didn't give them to us, but kind of let us know that if Prince was in a lot of pain, we were noticing that he wasn't doing too well, to administer Tylenol if he really needed it. So stuff like that. So the schedule was pretty intense and extensive. Prince was getting medications about 4 times a day to help with the pain, obviously, and to help keep him calm. And then obviously, it was a schedule where slowly we were tapering him off certain medications. And so we went home with that schedule, and then we also went home with a schedule of all the appointments that we had to come back to help the surgeon and his team monitor Prince's recovery. So he had phone appointments booked, as well as every week he had an appointment in person booked to see our orthopedic surgeon, so he could keep an eye on the implant, make sure everything was going well, keep an eye out for infections, things like that. And so we went home with all of that. They also kind of gave us information on how we should keep Prince at home. Obviously, they told us to keep him for as much of the day as we could in the recovery pen. He's not really supposed to be walking at all. The only times that we were supposed to be taking him out of the pen would be to take him to the bathroom. Anytime we had to take him up and down the stairs, because our backyard had 3 or 4 steps to go down to, we were supposed to use the sling that they provided, which was basically just a folded up towel with 2 sort of handles attached. And so we just had to make sure that we would take most of the stress and weight off of Prince's backside, so that he's not putting all of that weight on his leg. So we were just given all this information. We were also given information on how to pick Prince up if we needed to lift him, if we felt like we didn't really want him to go up and down the stairs too much. And the surgeon sort of let us know that when you're picking him up, make sure that his good leg, so his left leg, was sort of against your chest, and you just kind of make sure that your arm secures his hip and lift him up that way, obviously making sure that he wasn't moving around, and kind of scooping him up like this, where your hand is sort of basically securing his right hip. So that's how we were supposed to pick him up. All of this information was given to us. Any questions that we had for the surgeon and his team, they did a great job with answering that. And we basically started our car ride home. So the recovery was, I guess, quite unexpectedly tough for us. I just assumed that because Prince was coming home with medications to help keep him calm, he would be calm, but we kind of within the first week realized that the recovery was going to be a little bit tougher than we had expected. So Prince has always, just based on his personality, been the type of dog that's always kind of on. If he's sleeping and we get up, even to go to the bathroom, he's following us. He's kind of up and at him the second we're sort of giving him any signs that we're awake and ready to go. So he's just always been that kind of dog, always following one of us around. So he doesn't really sit still in one spot for a very long time. That's always been something that he's done. So knowing that about him, I guess we should have kind of seen it coming. But like I mentioned in my previous videos, we had set up his recovery pen right in our living room because we thought it would just be easier to take him straight from the recovery pen to the backyard, because obviously that would be the time that he'd be allowed out of the recovery pen and allowed to walk, would be when he had to go to the bathroom. So that was where we had set up the recovery pen, which is important to note, and I'm going to come back to that. But let's go back to the car ride. So the car ride was quite tough. Obviously, Prince had just woken up from the surgery, so I had mentioned in one of my previous videos that he was just feeling everything in this car ride. And this car ride was an hour long. So obviously, I had sat in the back with Prince, and we had set up a hammock with, like a mattress to keep him comfortable. And so he was just having a really tough time. And we immediately noticed within the first couple of days that Prince basically just wanted comfort and familiarity. So in terms of finding the spots that brought him the most comfort. So at home, he just kept wanting to go to his spot in the closet or his spot by the door, on the mat, in our living room, like certain spots that he just always used to use to take naps and stuff. And he just really wanted to go to those spots. In the car, we found that he just wanted to go in between the seats. So the hammock obviously took up the entirety of the back seat, and the way that it was set up was, the space between the front seats and the back seats was kind of blocked by this hammock, and Prince was used to crawling underneath the hammock to get to that spot. He really liked kind of being secure and in that tight little spot, and lying down there in the car. And so that's why I sat in the back with him, because I didn't really want him to climb down the seats and maneuver his way into that spot. And so while I was trying to keep him calm, he just was crying a lot. He kept moving around because he was just feeling that discomfort and pain of his hip, and just, I guess, it was very confusing for him because it was very new and he didn't really know what to do. And so I had brought some food in the car. I had basically brought like one entire meal for him because I knew he hadn't eaten. And so I was going to use that as like treats or whatever have you to kind of keep him distracted. And that was one good thing that did come out of it, was that he ate all of his food. So even though he was crying and he wasn't comfortable, I was able to distract him for about 20 minutes with his food. He did eat his entire meal, which was great. We were told to kind of make sure that he did eat, not too much and not too fast. But I kind of gave him a few pieces of kibble at a time, and he did eat, which was a really good sign. We were also told that Prince might not be able to go to the bathroom comfortably for about 4 days. That's just normal and expected, so just to keep an eye on that and not to be alarmed if that, he wasn't going to the bathroom right away. But anyways, going back to the car, he sort of ate his food, and then after that again, he was just very uncomfortable. And right towards, as we were getting home, he did end up maneuvering himself out of my arms and ended up going in between the seats, which I did not want at all, but ended up doing it. But that seemed to calm him down for the last 15 minutes of the ride, so I was like, okay, that's fine. I mean, he was fine. Obviously, I didn't want him to use his hip too much, and I was really worried about knocking that implant out. I think I was just, the entirety during Prince's recovery, I was just worried that he would knock his implant out, because that was like the biggest risk, right? That's the thing that obviously we were told to try and avoid as much as we could, obviously, because that would be quite tough on him. And so we ended up getting home and getting him out of the car. Obviously at that point he was calmer, bringing him up the stairs into the house. My boyfriend had carried him up, and we put him in the recovery pen. and sort of immediately realized that he just was in a lot of pain. So Prince kind of moved around quite a bit, shifted around quite a bit in the recovery pen, trying to find a comfortable position. And he ended up just finding a position where he just laid down. And at this point, it kind of worried us a little bit because it kind of just froze. Like his body just kind of like laid down in one spot, and then he just cried. And we actually have a video clip of it.
You're okay, bud. You're okay, Prince. You're okay.
Where he just kind of laid down and he was just crying for quite a while. We think it was because he was in quite a bit of pain, obviously, so it was quite hard for us to kind of see that. And at this point, we realized, okay, let's give the vet a call, because it wasn't quite time for his next dose of medications, which I did want to give him. But obviously I didn't want to do anything without consulting the vet and his team. They'd given us a phone number to reach out to in case, we really wanted to talk to someone right away. And so I called that number. I spoke to the vet tech who answered, and she said, you can give Prince his dosage earlier, and you can give him that Tylenol that we suggested, that if you find that he's in too much pain, you can give him half a Tylenol. So that's exactly what we did, and that did seem to help. It took a while for the medications to kick in. It took about half an hour to 40 minutes, I'd say, so it was quite a bit of a waiting game, a little bit nerve-wracking on our end, thinking medications might not even be making him feel better, but they did kick in and he was a lot calmer. He didn't go to sleep or anything, which we did expect, but he didn't go to sleep, but he was just a lot calmer. At this point, we gave him a bone to chew to work on, and that helped cheer him up a little bit. And at this point, we kind of realized, okay, we're definitely going to have to stay with him, because anytime either of us would get up to leave, and he would get quite upset and he would start whining and obviously visibly getting stressed. So at that point, we were like, okay, we clearly need to kind of make our base of operations around this recovery pen and around Prince and make sure he was comfortable. And so that's exactly what we did for the night. And to kind of add to a little bit of stress and anxiety, it was also Halloween that night, so we did have to prepare a little bit in advance, make sure that we had a note on our door telling people not to ring the doorbell if they did come up. We also set out candy for the kids a little bit ways down onto our driveway to make sure nobody came up the steps, because typically Prince reacts to the doorbell, he reacts to people coming up the steps to our door. And so we just wanted to make sure that we didn't stress Prince out any more than he was already stressed out with the pain and everything. And so we went out of our way to make sure that nobody kind of came to the door. In addition to that, the first day was fine. He did end up going to the bathroom, which was really, really good and made us feel a lot better. We did take him out to the backyard, I think 2 or 3 times after we got home. And yeah, he ended up going to the bathroom, which was great. Made us feel a lot better, that we didn't have to wait for the 4 days kind of, holding our breath, waiting for him to go to the bathroom. But he did end up going to the bathroom. And then the next 3 or 4 days were quite eye-opening for us in terms of realizing that the medications that we got didn't really do much other than act as painkillers. So the trazodone, which is supposed to kind of calm your dog, it has that calming effect and meant to basically sedate your dogs to a certain amount. We realized that did not work on Prince even a tiny bit. Like, it did calm him a little bit, so I think it just kind of took the edge off in terms of Prince wanting to move out of the recovery pen. As long as we were around, he'd be fine in it, as long as he had some sort of a distraction, like, a chew toy or something like that. But it didn't really do much to put him, to sleep or anything like that. He wasn't sedated, like he didn't have any kind of like, oh, I'm getting tired or anything like that, which we expected. And we expected, at least for the first week or two, this is at least what we were told from our vet as well, that for the first week or two, he wouldn't really want to do anything. He's just going to want to rest, and he's just going to want to, be in one spot for the most part. And so you don't really have to worry too much about him moving around. Obviously restrict his activity as much as you can, but he shouldn't be super hyper. He shouldn't be wanting to move around too much. I think at about the 4th day post-surgery, he was ready to go. Like, he was starting to get upset anytime he saw one of us take Snow out for a walk. He really wanted to go back to his walks, like I said, just really wanting to go back to his routine, finding comfort and familiarity. And so he was very upset at being confined to this recovery pen. He was not happy, and so we kind of had to make compromises where we would take him on little, you know, adventures just around the living room. So we would let him walk with the sling around the living room because he was just so sick of being cooped up, and it was just a lot of whining and crying. Thankfully there wasn't any like getting up and jumping around or anything like that, but yeah, he was just ready to go. Like, he didn't have any drowsiness from the medications at all. He was kind of, in terms of everything except for his leg, in terms of his energy level, everything was back to normal on day 4, which was great if you're kind of thinking of it from a perspective that, okay, my dog is clearly, you know, doing well, and you know, he's not, you know, depressed or upset, or it's just nice to see that he's had his energy level back. But at the same time, it made his recovery so much tougher because we had to find different ways of distracting him and making sure that he didn't move around too much, which was quite difficult for us. And so you know, we were told that Prince would not be able to take his first walk in around like 3.5 weeks, which was a long time, especially for Prince. And so we had quite a tough time with his recovery in terms of that, in terms of keeping him distracted. So kind of following that trajectory, in order to keep him distracted, we kind of got a bunch of, you know, pig's ears and bully sticks and different chew things, bones that we could give him. And we found that we were giving it to him a lot more often because he was just getting very, very bored. Like I said, this is not the type of dog that does well with, you know, enrichment and kind of sitting still and doing activities that way. He just was not taking to anything like that. Obviously the bones helped. It was food, and he is quite food motivated, so the bones and the chew sticks, the pig's ears helped a lot, but it only kept him distracted for a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes at most. With the bones, obviously we gave him about 30 minutes to 40 minutes, and then we would just take it away, give it to him later when we needed it, and we kind of kept him distracted like that. Now, one con that came out of it, which is something that I definitely wish I'd known before, but I guess every dog is different, was that Prince ended up getting quite an upset stomach because we were giving him so many like bully sticks and chew sticks. We did try to limit it to 2 a day, so like 1 pig's ear and 1 chew stick a day. And this was, we kind of just figured it would be easiest to give it to him while one of us was taking Snow out for a walk, to just keep him distracted so he wasn't really feeling that, oh, I'm left behind and I can't go on my walks, because that seemed to make him the most upset. So that would be the time that we were giving it to him. Even just those 2 a day upset his stomach to the point that he just got very gassy. You know, he got the runs, which was not good. We even at one point noticed like blood in his stool, which was not good. And during this recovery time, it was just the last thing that he needed. On top of that, one weird thing that we noticed that he started doing was he would kind of like be sitting still in his pen and then all of a sudden get spooked by something and run to the other side of his pen, which was also very alarming because we were supposed to keep him quite immobile. And so seeing him run from one end of the pen to the other, we obviously didn't want him to do that, and we didn't really know why he was doing that, what was spooking him, until actually our vet tech told us. So this was our local vet, not the surgeon and his team, but we ended up going to her for a completely different issue for Prince, and that was that Prince essentially was shaved. Half of his body was shaved, right? Like, except for just the side of his left hip, everything was shaved. Half of his tail was shaved, his back, everything was shaved. And so what was happening was when his hair started to grow back, and his testicles were also shaved, which is important. When his hair started to grow back, it was itchy for him and uncomfortable. And so over one night, he ended up, basically he was licking himself all night. Both of us were asleep and neither of us noticed that he had licked himself raw and basically like pushed his skin up and exposed, and like he just kind of left his testicle like bleeding and open and raw, which was terrible, obviously. And so We contacted our local vet and let them know the situation. We obviously didn't really want to take him to the vet for this. We, like I said, didn't want to move him around too much other than his appointments with the surgeon. And so we called the vet, told them what happened, and it turned out that we just needed to get a topical ointment and apply it to his testicles to make sure that they healed properly, because it looked quite gnarly. And so that is one thing to note for sure, which I wish we had known, and I wish we could have gotten a warning of. When the dogs are shaved, the hair will grow back, it'll be uncomfortable for them, so try to keep an eye out on them licking and stuff. Obviously Prince did it overnight, which was quite scary, but yeah, just kind of keep an eye out for that. Make sure that they're not licking themselves raw in any particular area. Obviously apply like maybe coconut oil or something like that to soothe that area so it's not super irritated. But yeah, so when we went to pick up that topical ointment for his testicles, we kind of told the vet the situation, or the vet tech at the time the situation, and she said, you know what's happening is I think all those treats that you're giving him are giving him gas, and he's farting, and he's feeling his fart on his shaved tail for the first time, and that's scaring him. And that's why he's jumping from one end of the recovery pen to the other. And so that was another thing that I wish we could have sort of seen coming. Obviously I'd given Prince all of these things before just to get him used to it, and I had given it to him in the recovery pen to kind of, you know, ease him into the transition of his recovery. But obviously I wasn't giving it to him twice a day, and so I guess twice a day was just too much for his stomach. And obviously there was no way for us to know that until he was going through it, and so that's what was happening. And so we had to kind of cut our only sort of distraction that we had for Prince to maybe one a day, and even that I wasn't really happy to do. So for like 3 or 4 days until his poops were back to normal and he wasn't bleeding, and things were kind of back, and I gave his stomach some time to readjust, it was even tougher because now whatever we used to distract Prince was something that we could no longer use. So we just kind of had to use ourselves to distract him and kind of try and see if we could like introduce a ball in some way. He loves his balls. He's like obsessed with his balls. Obviously he's a dog and an Australian Shepherd Border Collie mix. So we kind of tried to put balls in his pen, trying to get him to use his front paws to play. And so we had to come up with different ways to get him distracted, but that was one big one. The other thing that also came about was that we had switched Prince's food recently from his regular food to a different brand, and we realized like Prince was licking his paws a lot. Now I hadn't thought much of it at first because I just thought he's doing it because he's bored. Obviously he's stuck in a recovery pen for so long, so he's trying to find something to do, or it was like a comfort thing for him. But then I realized his paws were starting to get pink, which is, if you don't know, like a giveaway that your dog is licking their paws way too much. Like it's excessive licking, and it's when they lick themselves this much, it's not blood or anything like that. It's just something in their saliva that when it makes contact with their fur quite often, it just presents as pink. So when his paws started turning pink, I was like, okay, there's something up with this. And at this point, it was about a month after the surgery, so Prince was clear to go on his walks at this point. I kind of just Googled it, and one of the first things that came up was your dog could be allergic to new food if you switched him to new food, and we had switched him to new food. And so that was another thing that he was just going through without, us realizing, was that he had allergies to the new food. So as soon as we realized that, we immediately stopped the new food, went back to the old food, and lo and behold, that totally fixed that problem. So Prince's recovery was definitely a lot tougher than we expected. Considering the type of dog he is, how activity driven he is, it was tougher than usual. So if you have a calmer dog, if you have a dog that's just kind of likes to be a little bit lazy and likes to kind of be in one spot for the whole day, isn't really the type of dog that's more anxious and likes to move around a lot even throughout the house, then I feel like you might have a much easier time with the recovery. But because of how Prince is his activity level and everything and his energy level, that recovery was quite tough for us. And I had actually taken 2 weeks off from work, which I was really, really glad that I had taken off from work to kind of just watch him, because he really did need supervision throughout the day. He needed attention, he needed supervision. When I couldn't distract him with his bully sticks or his pig's ears, like I definitely needed to be around him more. And so I was glad that I took the time off from work to be with him. So if that is something that you can do, I would highly recommend that. And I'm also in a position where I work from home, so even when I did have to go back to work during those last 2 weeks before he was cleared for walks, I could work while I could watch him. So that was also a bonus. So if that is something that is possible for you to kind of get, either work from home during the time that your dog is going through the recovery, or just have someone that can watch him, that would be ideal. Obviously every dog is different, your dog may not need that, and this is just my experience with Prince and the type of dog he is. So that's me highlighting all of that. And that's pretty much it in terms of Prince's recovery. Fast forward to now, after following sort of the surgeon's pace of recovery in terms of introducing him to his walks and things like that, Prince is doing so much better. We are definitely in a position where we look back and we think we're so happy that we got the surgery. There were, some people that spoke to us right before we had gotten the surgery and told us it might not be the best idea. It is quite an extensive surgery. Are you sure you want to do this? And I'm so glad that we kind of trusted our gut and got the surgery for him. So in terms of his recovery, yes, it was definitely tougher than we expected, because we just expected him to be sedated and kind of not as energetic as usual for the first week at least, but that was not the case. He was just ready to go. He was ready to get back into his routine, even though he could not go back to his routine of walking and playing and walking around the house. But yeah, we just tried to find compromises to make sure that he was happy. So we did let him kind of go to certain spots in the house as long as at least one of us was awake and could watch him. Like I said, we were a little bit worried because we do have, slippery flooring or vinyl flooring in our house, and we didn't want him to slip. So we just made sure that when he wasn't in his pen, that one of us would be watching him at all times. And mostly it was just a matter of him getting comfortable in a spot and just sleeping there. And so once we kind of realized that all he wanted to do was just find comfort in his spots, and it was just a matter of us kind of getting him from point A to point B, it got a lot easier. And so that's something that you can keep an eye out for as well. Like if your dog does want that, and I'm sure like a lot of dogs would want that, is just finding comfort and familiarity and just wanting to go to certain spots in the house. So if you can sort of like surgery proof their usual spots, that would be great. So we ended up putting lots of mats and stuff in the house as well to make sure that he could go to certain spots and still be comfortable. And that's pretty much it in terms of Prince's recovery. Up until now, like I said, he's doing super well. One funny thing that we've noticed is like he's got a little bit of a power stance. So because that hip, the right hip does have that implant, I think it gives him slightly more range of motion. So he sticks his hip out right before he's about to like make a run for it, when we're about to throw a ball. It gives him, I guess, a little bit more stability. So that's one funny thing that we noticed that came out of the hip replacement. Obviously, in terms of, how he's doing post-surgery, he's doing great. Like, I keep thinking back to that year in between his diagnosis and his surgery where he was just so bad, where even like 5 to 10 minutes of running and he'd just be limping for days and be in so much pain. That is, such a far way back in our past now, and it's so nice to see him being able to exercise and do the things that he wants to do without feeling pain, without getting worse, and if anything, he's still getting better. And so that's something that, we are very, very happy with. We were extremely happy with the surgeon and his team for everything that they did. Obviously, seeing him at this point is just so rewarding. Having, gone through that tough recovery time, it was totally, totally, totally worth it. And so if you are kind of on the fence about, the surgery, I'm at least giving you what our experience has been like, and we have absolutely zero regrets getting him that surgery. He's doing so well. So that's been our experience so far, and that's kind of, where we are now, is that we're so much happier having gone through this experience. And I wouldn't wish it on anybody. Obviously, I wouldn't want anybody to have to go through the same thing as a dog owner, to have, you know, your dog diagnosed, especially at such an early age, and kind of seeing, you know, your healthy dog deteriorate over time. It was quite heartbreaking for us to watch as well. And so if you are one of those people, know that there is, you know, support here for you. And yeah, this was just my way of trying to give you as much information as possible. And so if you do have a total hip replacement coming up for your dog, you can be a little bit more prepared. Obviously, don't, you know, change their food or anything like that. And if you are planning on giving them, you know, certain treats to enrich them, just kind of watch how they react with it. And yeah, that's all the information that I have to give. And obviously, I know this was a much longer video than the rest of them, but there's just so much about his recovery that I wanted to share, that we went through. And yeah, I hope this is something that helps anyone that's going through this. And if you have any questions about any other part of Prince's, you know, journey with hip dysplasia and his total hip replacement, please leave them in the comments below. If you did find any information that was useful out of this series and this particular video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you in the next video.